Okay, let's jump right into it. Today we're taking a deep dive into Friedrich Nietzsche, some really potent, challenging ideas.
Absolutely. He's definitely a thinker who makes you work. We're looking at a YouTube transcript that unpacks some of his key concepts.
Right, and the transcript highlights his style, those aphorisms, short, sharp sayings.
Exactly. Not long essays, but these dense nuggets. And they're often, ambiguous, poetic almost.
Which means, as the source points out, different people can take different things away. It's not always straightforward.
No, definitely not. That's part of the challenge and maybe the appeal. So our mission today is to kind of sift through some of these ideas from the source material.
See what insights we can pull out.
Yeah. And the material kicks off with a really striking quote from Nietzsche himself from Ecce Homo.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
I'm not a man, I'm a dynamite.
Wow. Dynamite. That's quite a statement. How does the source read that?
Well, it suggests he really saw himself as fundamentally different, not ordinary. Maybe even a hint of the later Superman idea there.
Set apart.
Right. And crucially, he knew his ideas weren't just going to be accepted quietly. They would be explosive.
Like a bomb in the philosophical world.
Exactly. Shattering old ideas.
Mhm.
He seemed pretty confident they'd remain central, even controversial.
And the source notes he was right.
Pretty much, yeah.
Mhm.
Within about 30 years of his death, his ideas really did explode across Europe, just like he sort of predicted. It's uncanny.
It really sets the stage for how radical he was, and maybe nowhere more so than his view on truth, which the source gets into.
Oh, absolutely. His claim is pretty shocking. Truth, in an absolute sense, well, it's impossible. Nothing is truth.
Okay, so if there's no absolute truth, what is there? According to Nietzsche, I mean.
Only perspective. Interpretation. That's it. He wasn't buying the idea of truth as something out there to be found.
Like digging for treasure.
Right. Instead, he argued truth has to be well-made, constructed, built by us.
So we create truth, we don't discover it.
That's the core idea.
Hmm?
The source quotes him saying, truth is a lie on which everyone agrees.
A lie we agree on.
Yeah. And the material gives examples, like old folk beliefs.
Yeah.
Jumping in a well causes fever, or listen to stories in the day and your uncle gets lost.
Right, things people just accepted.
Exactly. Maybe for social reasons, maybe just because. But the group agreed, and so for them it became true. It functioned as truth.
So it's about the collective belief making it real, functionally speaking.
That's how the material presents it. If enough people buy into an interpretation, it takes on the force of truth in that context. There's another line the source uses.
Which one?
Truth is the illusion that we have forgotten is an illusion.
Like a magic trick you stop seeing as a trick.
Precisely the analogy in the source. You see the trick, you know it's illusion, but maybe over time, or generations, you forget. It just becomes reality, the accepted truth.
And the source says politicians, business people, they're good at this.
Masters of it, according to the material. Crafting illusions that become widely accepted as just the way things are. Truth.
Okay, so summing up this bit from the source. No absolute facts, only interpretations. No objective truth, just constructed viewpoints.
That's the essence. And this leads straight into the next big point the sources make. If it's all interpretation, well, how does one interpretation win out? How does it become the truth?
And the answer isn't pretty, is it? It's not about being more true.
Nope. According to the material, it boils down to the game of power.
Power dynamics decide what counts as truth.
That's the argument presented. The interpretation pushed by the powerful, the dominant group or person in a specific time, that's what gets accepted as truth.
The Cold War example in the source material really drives this home.
It does. It's very clear. You have the U.S. and the Soviet Union, two superpowers, right? Both had completely different stories justifying their actions. Vietnam for the U.S., Eastern Europe for the Soviets.
Yeah, the U.S. narrative was stopping communism, defending democracy.
And the Soviet narrative was fighting cruel capitalism, saving humanity. Polar opposites.
And both sides pushed their story hard.
Immensely. Huge resources into media, propaganda, making their interpretation the truth for people under their influence.
So if you were in the U.S. sphere, you likely believed the U.S. version. Soviet sphere, the Soviet version.
Right. And the source points out the core conflict was this belief, we are right, they are wrong, our truth versus their lie.
But then the Cold War ended.
And boom. Those narratives, those truths that seem so solid, they just collapsed. The material argues they were revealed for what they were.
Yeah.
Constructions. Interpretations
Okay.
held up by power. Political, military, ideological.
It really shows how relative truth can be. Depends where you stand, who's influencing you.
Exactly. Your location, your power level, your identity. The source lists a whole range of factors. And this idea, this relativity of truth, it was hugely influential later on.
Yeah, especially on those postmodern thinkers.
Absolutely. The sources explicitly link Nietzsche's ideas on truth and power to figures like Foucault, Derrida, Baudrillard, Michel Foucault especially.
He picked up on that power-knowledge connection?
Deeply. He believed, very much like Nietzsche suggested, that there's this intimate link between power and knowledge. Shakti or Gyan, as the source puts it.
How does that link work, according to the sources?
It was presented as a kind of cycle. More power means more resources to get knowledge.
Like better education, access to information.
Right. The source mentions the upper classes often having that advantage. So power gets you knowledge, and then more knowledge reinforces or increases your power.
And you see that everywhere.
Pretty much, yeah. The sources suggest it plays out in almost every area of life. It's a fundamental equation.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The source also dives into another huge Nietzschean idea from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The Superman, the Übermensch.
Right. And it starts with that famous line, "Man is something that shall be overcome."
Which sounds kind of harsh, but it's not about destruction, is it?
No, not annihilation. It's about evolution, transcendence. The idea, as the material explains, is that our current state isn't the end point. Humanity evolved, yes, from tribal life caves.
But we're not finished.
Exactly. We're just a stop along the way. The destination, the goal Nietzsche sets, is for humanity to eventually surpass itself, become this Superman.
And that's where the rope image comes in. Man is a rope tied between animal and Superman, a rope over an abyss.
Such a powerful image. The source explains it like a tightrope walker. You're suspended over this huge, terrifying void.
Okay.
One end of the rope is the animal, our past, our instincts. The other end is the Superman, the future potential, the goal.
And we are the rope, or the walker on the rope.
The interpretation of the source is that you are the rope walker. You're making that journey, balancing precariously from the animalistic towards this higher state, this enlightenment.
Over an abyss sounds dangerous.
Extremely. One mistake, and you fall. The journey itself is fraught with peril.
So the rope represents our present life, full of tension.
The source connects the rope to your present tense, that state you're in, which is full of tension, precisely because you're stretched between past and future potential. You have to overcome this state.
So basically, keep moving, keep striving, become better, complete the journey.
That's the boiled-down message presented. It's a continuous, demanding process of self-overcoming.
That image, walking a tightrope over nothingness, it definitely sticks with you. Which maybe leads us to another famous one the source tackles, about monsters in the abyss.
Ah, yes. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze back into you.
2 parts there. Let's take the first, fighting monsters.
It's a stark warning, isn't it? The material interprets it very directly. Be careful that battling evil doesn't turn you evil.
You become what you hate.
Essentially. The source uses examples like fighting murderers makes you a murderer, fighting corruption makes you corrupt. If you become the monster in the process, then even if you win, you've actually lost.
Because the whole point was not to be a monster.
Exactly. You fate them because they are monstrous. Becoming one yourself defeats the purpose. The source suggests this is a depressingly common story.
Okay, and the second part. Gazing into the abyss. What is the abyss here?
The source describes it as, a deep, dark void. Hell, maybe. Or just a profoundly negative situation. The darkness in life or in ourselves.
And staring at it too long is bad news.
That's the warning. Gaze into that darkness, that negativity for too long, and it starts to affect you. It pulls you in.
So dwelling on bad stuff makes it take root in you.
That's the core interpretation from the material. Focus on fear. And fear starts to focus on you, making you fearful. It's about protecting yourself from being consumed by the negativity you might be observing or confronting.
Don't let the darkness win, basically.
Right. Its nature is to overwhelm, so you have to guard against it. The source does briefly mention, though.
An alternative.
Yeah, like maybe gazing intently at goodness or your goals could also have a gazing back effect, pulling you towards them. But the main thrust in the source is definitely the warning about negativity.
Fair enough. It's a powerful caution. Okay, finally, the source uses a really great aphorism to talk about individuality, the one about dancing.
Oh, I love that one. Some people were dancing because they heard the music. Others, who could not hear the music, thought the dancers were mad.
Simple, but it says a lot. How does the source unpack it?
It sees it as being all about individual perspective. The dancers, they're tuned into something internal, their own reason, their own joy, their music.
Their individuality.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But the others, the crowd maybe, they don't hear that music. They just see the outward behavior, the dancing, and it looks irrational. Crazy.
So if you follow your own path, your own music, people who don't get it might just think you're nuts.
Pretty much. Especially if your path goes against the grain. The crowd doesn't understand the why, so they judge the what. The source uses a fantastic personal story to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah. The one about cricket.
That's the one. The speaker's father incredibly learned languages, Upanishads, Vedanta.
A real scholar.
Totally. But knew absolutely nothing about cricket. Zero. Meanwhile, the son was obsessed. Watching matches, reading about it, listening to commentary.
Living and breathing cricket.
Right. And the father just thought he was completely mad. He's classic. He's kind of getting crazy. Watching this all day.
I can picture that scene.
Me too. But years later, the son shows the father this specific Nietzsche quote.
Yeah.
About the dancers and the music.
And
And the father just got it. Instantly. Laughed out loud. He finally understood what the son felt, even if he still didn't understand the rules of cricket.
he heard the son's music, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. The source emphasizes the father had a big heart. He accepted the validity of his son's passion, his source of joy, even without understanding the specifics.
That's a great story. It really shows the point. Just because you don't understand someone's reasons doesn't make their reasons invalid.
Precisely. It validates that individual perspective, even if the crowd can't hear the tune.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit, drawing from the source material, Nietzsche's challenging style, the dynamite self-image,
His radical view of truth as interpretation, tied to power.
the Superman idea as this journey of self-overcoming, the tightrope walk,
Yeah, and those warnings about fighting monsters, gazing into the abyss.
and finally, that beautiful insight on individuality with the dancing metaphor. These are heavy ideas, but really compelling.
Definitely. They force you to question things you might take for granted about truth, about yourself, about how society works.
And as the material itself pointed out, this is just scratching the surface of Nietzsche.
Oh, absolutely. Thousands more lines, ideas. The source even invited listeners to suggest other lines for a future dive.
Which sounds like a great plan. Maybe compare him with Indian philosophy or dive deeper into postmodernism, like the source hinted.
Lots of potential there.
Mhm.
But for now, maybe here's a thought to leave with, stemming from what we discussed. If truth is constructed, influenced by power and agreement, well, whose truth are you operating under right now?
And how much of it is just the loudest voice you've heard?
Right. Or thinking about the abyss, is there a negativity, a fear that you're focusing on too much? Is it starting to gaze back? Something to chew on after this dive into Nietzsche's dynamite thoughts.